When you think of caviar, you immediately think of food for the rich. Caviar is a status symbol and a delicacy that can be enjoyed only by the elite. So, if you want to know how the rich eat their fish eggs, then here's how salmon caviar is harvested. Let's dive right into it, shall we? Origin of caviar. There are many varieties of caviar, with the salmon and beluga sturgeon caviar being the most popular. The latter is much more expensive, whereas salmon caviar is oftentimes cheaper. Just 2.2 pounds of beluga caviar can cost you around $16,000. Now, compare that baby with a price tag of only $200 for the same 2.2 pound can of salmon caviar. The reason we have such a huge price difference is the rarity. Salmon, as a fish, is much more common than beluga sturgeon, which is on the list of endangered species and is nearing extinction. Thanks, greedy illegal fishermen! As you may have already noticed, the main difference between these two forms of caviar is their color and size. The salmon caviar has this orangey-red color, where the beluga caviar is usually black. The eggs from the salmon are larger in diameter than those found in the beluga sturgeon. But how do they know which fish have caviar inside them? How do they know when the caviar is ready for harvesting and brining? For that, we'll have to first look at salmon farms. The journey of the caviar begins in the hatchery. They are indoor pools where the caviar eggs are being fertilized and incubated. After they're hatched, the babies are placed into rearing trays, and after that, they're transferred to holding tanks for about a year. Now, you should note that the salmon are actually kept in freshwater. Only after spending the year in the holding tanks are they transferred to the saltwater pools, located somewhere out into the sea. It takes years for the females to reach maturity. This means that it also takes years before the roe is actually harvested to make caviar. When the fish are ready, the big mama salmons go through an ultrasound, where a specialist examines the eggs and checks to see if they're ready. It's crucial to choose mature females. That way, the caviar is very plump, it has reached the maximum diameter of the egg, and the taste is much richer than caviar extracted from immature salmon. That's why most of the popular salmon farms make it a rule to have each fish receive an ultrasound. This will accurately determine the state of the roe. After they've confirmed that the female is ready to give birth, then we have the process of harvesting the salmon. When it comes to harvesting caviar, the farmers normally go by two methods of extraction. Number 1, the classic method. Number 2, the humane harvesting method. The first one is used by most farms, and some people have been frowning upon this practice. This is because the fish roe is extracted by making a large incision on the underbelly of the salmon. But before they do this, the extractors would have to place the fish in ice-cold water to minimize their movement. This will ensure a lower fat content and render the fish unconscious before they're placed on the operating table. The fish is then killed quickly while it's still unconscious. All of the blood is taken, cleaned out, and the roe is removed immediately. A second too late, and the post-mortem chemical released by the fish would just ruin the caviar. The salmon usually has 2 roe sacs, and both of them are passed through a mesh screen to remove the eggs from the membrane. The eggs that remain in the bowl below are called green eggs. The green eggs have to undergo a second filtering procedure. After they're drained from the excess water, experts carefully weigh the raw caviar and measure out how much salt to add to the entire mix. After measuring the salt to a split gram, it is slowly and carefully mixed into the salmon eggs. All of the things we talked about so far were concerning the classic method of harvesting. Now we'll talk about the humane method of harvesting. This one, unlike the first method, doesn't kill the salmon in the process. Because of this, you will ask, why don't people use the second method instead of killing the fish? And the answer has everything to do with flavor. Before the fish could be harvested, it has to undergo hormone therapy. This hormone therapy usually degrades the quality of the fish eggs, and famous salmon connoisseurs don't like the taste. But anyway, we have to at least talk about the different ways caviar is quote-unquote milked from the mother. Because you cannot extract the eggs out of the mother's body before they've reached maturity, scientists inject the salmon with a hormone. This will separate the eggs from the membrane before they're ready to be delivered. If the mother delivers the eggs by natural birth, they're inedible. That's why, just a few days before giving birth, the mother receives the injection. Specialists then use a technique of milking the belly of the salmon, and the red roe comes flying out of the mother's back end like a jet stream. Be careful though, if the stroke is too rough, then you might damage the eggs. Too gentle, and you don't get any of the eggs out of the mother. That's why skilled professionals need to be very careful when harvesting caviar using the humane method. Just as a reminder, even if the harvesters use the humane method, most of the time the fish still die. That's because of the hormones that were injected into the female's body. After being extracted, the process for filtering and brining the caviar is the same as with the classic method. Finally, the caviar is graded for its quality, and then comes the next step, which is packaging the salmon caviar. The prepared caviar is usually sold in glass jars. Unlike beluga caviar, which usually comes in tins of various sizes, these are actually sold in jars. One of the reasons for doing this is to showcase their unique color, but also to stop the oxidation. You see, when you sit caviar with metal objects, it loses a lot of its flavor. That's why people always use wooden or plastic utensils to extract and then store caviar. Rarely will you see someone putting caviar in a metal bowl. Now that we have caviar in a jar, how do you eat it? Consumption. Well, this is basically the most important thing when it comes to caviar. You want to eat it, but you also have to make sure you feel fancy doing it. That's why you will need to get out the best kitchen utensils, buy some of the best breads and crackers, and do like the Russians do to prepare them. Take one cracker, spread a little cream cheese on top of it, and then layer the luscious red caviar on top. If you want to do it the authentic Russian way, then you'll have to take a slice of bread and spread a thin layer of butter on top. Because the salmon caviar is already salty, you won't need to add any salt to the butter. Just plop the caviar on top, and you're good to go. We're sure you've seen orange caviar placed on top of sushi as a decoration, and this is yet another way of eating the caviar. We also have to mention that because it's cheaper than beluga caviar and available almost anywhere, you can even prepare your own caviar at home. To do this, you will need to purchase some salmon roe at the fishmonger. When you come home, you will need to run the caviar under some warm water, almost hot water. Just make sure the water is not too hot, otherwise you'll cook the eggs. Once the membrane is a little cooked, you can then start to massage it, and the little fish eggs will pop right out. Rinse them in some cold water, put them in some salty brine, and leave them for a couple of seconds. After that, you drain the excess water and you store the caviar in airtight glass jars. Now that you've made it, make sure you eat it before it goes bad. On a related note, we wanted to know if you've ever tried caviar before. You can tell us in the comment section below. If you'd like more videos like these, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss any of them. And as always, thanks for watching, guys.